Three, two. All right, folks. Jermaine, Ferrell in the house with the WFXR Sports Fastlane right here on WFXRTV.com. And I tell you what, it's always a joy. My man, or racing insider in the house. He's actually down at Daytona. How about that? Sammy Eanes, what is up, buddy? How's things down at Daytona?
Jermaine, it is so good to see you. So good to kick off the 2022 season again. Things are great in Daytona. I'm actually here at the Streamline Hotel, the birthplace of NASCAR. December 14th, 1947, Bill France Company got together in this very rooftop that I'm sitting in to form NASCAR. We're down here for some fun stuff with racing, some fun stuff with Dale Jr. this weekend. But more importantly, I'm excited to be here with you in the fast lane once again.
For those who probably don't understand, what is Daytona like? Especially, it's changed a little bit, obviously. Usually it's the whole month of February, part of January, everybody camps out down there, probably still do. But what is it like, that week leading up to the race? I mean, you have the qualifying, you have the duels and all that. Before that, you used to have the clash. But what is that like for people who probably don't know? It seems like it's a bucket list thing to do.
It definitely is. And if you're a racing fan, you've ever been down here, it's quite the experience. Like you said, even without the clash and having that full second weekend of activities, is still people camped out. There's an energy here. There's a buzz in the air. The new speedway, if you have been to Daytona, but it was before they renovated it, it's almost like a different facility now. It looks so incredible. Obviously, the racing is still great, but the venue itself is tremendous. And then it's just cool to be down here and be amongst other race fans, and the anticipation, the excitement for kicking off the season with the biggest event of the year.
Yeah, it's funny how people, it's the Super Bowl of racing, and it's funny to have your Super Bowl at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, that's one of the great unique things about NASCAR and about Daytona. They begin the season with the biggest race of the year. And, I think most folks in the industry wouldn't have it any other way.
That's good stuff. So much to unpack as we get ready for the season. But really, the first thing I kind of want to start off with, we talk about the clash. It was held out at the Coliseum in Los Angeles, a quarter-mile track, a lot of bumping and grinding, which is what a lot of tracks were back in the day. You kind of have a throwback to what it used to be. What was your thoughts and impressions on it? Because it seems like NASCAR once again is trying to open things up again. You had a lot of diversity and everything out there in Los Angeles. Just your thoughts and feelings about that whole thing.
Yeah, I thought, quite frankly, the clash was a huge home run. It was dynamite for, hold on a second. Is it too loud? The background noise too loud?
You're fine.
Good. Okay. Sorry. Sorry. Go back. I thought the clash, Jermaine, sorry. Do you want to lead in with a question, or do you want me to just
No, just go ahead.
Okay. Got it. Sorry about that. I thought, Jermaine, the clash was a home run in every possible way. I thought the scene in Los Angeles in the Coliseum, that historic venue, putting cars on the track in there, kudos to Ben Kennedy, everyone at NASCAR who had a hand in pulling that race together. I thought it was an amazing spectacle to see. I thought the racing was fun, seeing the cars race on those close quarters. I kind of thought there would be a few more cautions than there were, but I think people were, kind of trying to play it safe with the new cars. But I just thought it was a fantastic event. It made NASCAR look cool and feel cool in a different kind of way to have that race in that venue. And as much as I'm sure people love the clash at Daytona and love coming down here and having those full 2 speed weeks like you talked about, I don't know that we'll ever see the clash back here in Daytona after that event that we saw in Los Angeles a couple of weeks ago.
Just looking at some of the notes from it, 70% of the tickets sold to the clash were first-time NASCAR purchasers, and it's pulled the highest rating since 2016. So obviously that's a lot of momentum to get rock and roll. I'm sure the traditionalists probably didn't like it, but I thought it was pretty cool to have it at an iconic venue. You've had national championships, and you've had the Olympics, and you've had, big time events, World Series, stuff like that. You've had a lot of big time events there. So to NASCAR to conquer LA, it just seems like NASCAR with the expansion of things. If you remember, this, NASCAR was much of a southeastern regional like sport, but now they're really opening up to different fans.
They are. But one thing I thought was interesting that you mentioned there was the traditionalists. And in some ways, if you're a really old school traditionalist, you should have loved this, because you want to talk about close quarters, old school racing. I mean, that's what you got in the Clash. And Dale Earnhardt Jr., he actually tweeted out, he wondered if this would spark kind of a short track revival, which I thought was an interesting thing to think about, because if you have these new fans tuning in and they're seeing the race in this small venue, maybe they want to check out Martinsville, maybe they want to check out Bristol. I think we've gotten so accustomed to those intermediate tracks over the last 20, 30 years as you've lost some of those short tracks. It will be interesting to see if some of these new fans see that and gravitate more toward that tight, close quarter racing versus the intermediates or even the super speedway.
That's some interesting stuff right there. And then, some other notes, I mean, some other things, when you look at just what is the biggest thing, and there's some things I want to touch with you, but what is the biggest storyline you feel that is leading into the season? Because there's so many things that happen in the off season, but what do you feel is like the biggest thing that, from your perspective, is what NASCAR fans will probably be having their eye on?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, honestly, is the new car, the next gen car. We're finally here. We're finally rolling that out after years of R&D with the folks in NASCAR. Now, I know I've seen a lot of drivers talk about it, and they say if you're a fan, that you're really not going to notice that much difference, which I think is accurate, right? I think most casual fans, they just see a car on the track and they may notice the larger wheel well, they'll notice the single lug, obviously they'll notice the number being in a different position on the car. But I do think that is a key storyline this year in how that car performs on the track, and then how it may allow other teams to come in and, lower the barrier of entry, lower that cost, the price point to get in and compete at a high level, and maybe level the playing field a little bit and let a team like Front Row or Trackhouse or some of these teams who maybe haven't competed at the level of a Hendrick or Gibbs get to that level by this new next gen car.
And then one other neat thing is obviously new faces and new places where they shuffle the deck. Some of the things like, for instance, you look at a Kurt Busch. I mean, he's teaming up with Bubba Wallace with that team that is owned by Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan. And then, Busch doing that. Brad Keselowski, part owner of Roush Racing, did Trackhouse Racing acquiring Chip Ganassi. But one guy that I tell you, one guy I had my eye on, and I want to get your thoughts on this. How about Harrison Burton? First of all, qualified 10th, for Daytona coming up on Sunday. But I feel like if there is a Rookie of the Year candidate, I feel it would be Harrison Burton. Do you have anybody other than him that is probably a strong candidate for Rookie of the Year?
I think Harrison Burton is a great pick for that. I think all three of the marquee rookies, Gilliland, Cindric, and Burton, all have a great shot in this. I think Cindric being basically taking over the Brad Keselowski seat at Team Penske may have a little bit of an edge there when you're talking about Rookie of the Year standings. But I think any of those guys can compete. And to your point, I mean, the Wood brothers always run fantastic down here at Daytona. It showed that they brought another fast car in Front Row qualifying last night. Harrison Burton had a great run. We'll see how he does in the duels and then again on Sunday. But I'm excited to see a guy with Southwest Virginia roots driving for Southwest Virginia's team.
And then, of course, we got Ross Chastain, who's that dual team with Trackhouse. He's joined them. And so, there's a lot of big things. Now, let's circle back to last night. Kyle Larson, the defending champion, he'll be on the pole for Sunday's race. Just your thoughts about Kyle Larson entering the season and what he's going to do, because he had such an impressive year. And what's the old saying? What are you going to do for me as an encore?
Absolutely. I mean, we began 2022 where we ended 2021, and that was with Kyle Larson front and center. He had the fastest car last night. And just the dominant story of Hendrick Motorsports in Front Row qualifying for the Daytona 500. They've had a pole winner, I think, 8 of the last 9 years. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was the lone exception to that in 2020. They have the front row again. Alex Bowman on the front row for the 5th consecutive year, which has never happened before. But yeah, I thought Kyle Larson, just picked up where he left off. He dominated 2021. He came down here. The pole, it means a lot in prestige. And Larson even said that it means a lot. Mr. H, Rick Hendrick, mentioned how much he wants to be on the front row at Daytona. Sadly, from a competition standpoint and winning the race, pole winner hasn't won since Dale Jarrett in 2000. But it is great to be on the pole at Daytona. All eyes are on the beginning of that race, more than arguably any other time in NASCAR. So have your car front and center is awesome. And what else could Kyle Larson do except capture the pole for Daytona coming off of his championship last season?
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that the last time the pole winner won was in 2000. You mentioned that with Dale Jarrett. But looking at more notes from NASCAR, and I tell you, NASCAR, they be cranking out notes. I mean, I know how back in the day you guys used to do it there. But looking at the list, I count here that there's been 9 drivers to win from the pole. Bill Elliott did it twice. Kelly Yarborough did it twice. And of course, Jeff Gordon, Richard Perry, Fireball Roberts was the first in 62. So you would think that a lot of drivers would have done it, but it is crazy to think it's been 22 years since that's happened. You would have thought it'd have been happened by now because of who's been on the pole.
Yeah, you had those back-to-back years. I believe Gordon won from the pole in '99 and then Jarrett in 2000. And it hasn't happened since, but I think it just speaks to the wild card that Daytona is. And I've heard some people say that, you know, maybe Daytona isn't a wild card when you look at people who consistently run well here, like Denny Hamlin. But it is. I mean, look at Michael McDowell winning last year. You look at Trevor Bayne, the Wood brothers you were talking about just a decade or so ago, winning this race. Produces some unbelievable finishes with Cinderella moments. And I think that's another thing that makes it so special and unique.
And then when you look at what we got here this Sunday, I mean, this really, I mean, everybody gets fired up. I mean, I get fired up, but I mean, you know, I think everybody gets fired up, and NASCAR is getting off to such a good start. You know, and then last year, you know, we did have some feuds pop up. Do you see any of those kind of rearing its head again? I mean, I know it's been some time since you know these guys have probably matched up. Do you see any of those feuds we had last year, you know, rearing its head?
You know, you never know yet. Have Harvick and Elliott kind of squashed their beef? Is that any of that going to carry over? I think enough time has passed now. Everybody tries their best to come into a new season with a clean slate and not worrying about what happened in the past. But you know, once you get out there and you get behind the wheel and you're, you know, a quarter inch from somebody, you never know what old wounds may open back up.
Now, I got to ask you this too. I mean, looking at the season, as far as pressure to have a strong and great season, who do you feel the hot seat is on? I mean, I know it's so early, but who do you feel this year has got to put up or shut up, or maybe they're looking for a new ride? Is there anyone out there that stands out to you? Do you feel like anyone has to really do something this year?
I don't know that he's necessarily going to have to be looking for a new ride if he doesn't perform this year, but I do think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Bubba Wallace this season. You know, 23-11, yeah, you have a second year under your belt. You have a second car. You have a little bit of a mentor there with Kurt Busch on the team as well. And I think Bubba, he got the win at Talladega last year, which was awesome. You know, he didn't have the best day in the Clash, but you know what? He runs really well at Daytona, so he could start the season off with a W here, which would get that monkey off the back. And obviously, like, how cool would that be to see Bubba Wallace in victory lane in the biggest race of the season? But he's the one that kind of comes to mind immediately when you think about someone who really needs to have a good year. And then also, I wouldn't say lose a ride kind of guy, but, you know, Kevin Harvick had a little bit of a down year last year. And I think he's going to have some pressure, especially on himself, to rectify that and to have a strong 2022.
And you mentioned something interesting. It might be the same answer, but who do you feel will have the bounce back year? You know, had a struggle last year. Who do you feel will bounce back?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Kevin Harvick. I think he's just too good. And, you know, you can't keep a guy like that away from victory lane. I mean, he was so good 2 years ago. And I know this new car could be a game changer a little bit for some of the drivers and the teams, but I feel like Kevin Harvick's going to have a nice bounce back season and be in that championship conversation again in 2022.
So when we look at the Daytona 500, I mean, it is the great, I wouldn't say the grand day of all, but let's face it, it's the big one. I mean, everybody wants to win that one. And what's funny is winning Daytona, yeah, if you win the one, you know, the second race is nice, but it's nothing like winning the first one, the Daytona 500, because you get extended out and say, hey, you know, I've won at Daytona, but no, did you win the Daytona 500? And that's the biggest question. You know, you look at last year's winner, Michael McDowell, that came out of nowhere. So when you look at, you know, what do you feel his chances are, you know, even though he won it last year?
Yeah, McDowell is a great super speedway racer. He really is. He performs well at Dega. He performs well at Daytona. And I know we talked about this a little bit when he won. Like, was it a Cinderella story? Sure, because he hadn't found victory lane and he does it in the biggest race of the year, but it wasn't shocking. So I would not surprise me at all to see McDowell running up front again in the waning moments of the race on Sunday.
And then obviously we're going to focus on another track. It's the 75th anniversary of Martinsville, the paperclip. They got a lot of stuff going on. You know, Clay Campbell talked about it. We interviewed him earlier in the week. He talked about a lot of special things that'll be happening not only on those race weekends, you know, the penultimate weekend, but also the night racing, the 3 nights in April, and then the Valley Star Credit Union and the mods will be there. So they're really going to be busy right then and there. And, just your thoughts. I mean, I know you're from there. That's your home track. I mean, that's you. I'm surprised we don't have a Sammy Eanes sign out there. Welcome to the home of Sammy Eanes. We rolled through Martinsville, which we need one. I might have to work on that. But Martinsville, what has it meant from your personal perspective? What has the Martinsville Speedway meant to NASCAR?
I mean, it's the foundation. It's exactly what NASCAR used to be when we talked about earlier with the Coliseum and the short track racing. I mean, that was what NASCAR racing was all about. Martinsville is the only track that has hosted a race every single year in the history of the sport. It is what racing was built on. It's truly the foundation. I think it's amazing. Obviously, selfishly, since I'm from there, I think it's amazing that they still have 2 races. I think it's a credit to Clay Campbell and all of the folks there to continue to innovate, adding the lights, making sure that the experience is great for people who are coming to visit. I mean, it's the Fenway Park, it's the Wrigley Field, it's the LA Coliseum, whatever you want to put it of NASCAR. It is a very, very special place, and I hope it remains a special place, an integral part of NASCAR for years to come.
And then a couple other things too, new during the season is the return of the 2 Mile Auto Club Speedway, the newly revamped Atlanta Motor Speedway. They're talking about steeper turns, 28-degree banking, the return of Homestead to the playoffs. That's a big one. And then also, the Worldwide Technology Raceways. NASCAR is going to compete for the first time in the St. Louis area. Just your thoughts about any of those I touched.
Yeah, I think it's great. All those things. The schedule isn't quite as chalked with new venues as it was last year and the variants we saw last year, but there are changes, and I love the fact that they're bringing the Cup Series to Worldwide Technology Raceway in St. Louis. That's a super cool venue that the trucks have raced on in the past. So I think that's exciting. Auto Club, I know they haven't gone through with the renovation and taken that down to a smaller track. Sounds like that may be on pause for now, but it's good to see them back out there, and hopefully some of that buzz and excitement from the Clash carries over and gets fans to come out to Auto Club and check it out. Homestead, hosted the championship race for so long, so being back in the playoffs is great, and I'm excited to see the revamped Atlanta as well.
And then obviously in our neck of the woods, kind of sort of Richmond, the changes that they lost they're going to be racing during the daytime both times. Kind of missed the night. I'm going to miss the night race at Richmond. Just your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love night racing at Richmond. I know that you can't have too many night racing events, or else the ones they become less important or maybe lose a little bit of feel. And Martinsville's got the night race now, which is awesome. I will miss one of the races at Richmond not being on Saturday night. But if we've learned anything, that they did that in the past, where they took it to a day race and went back to night race. So who knows? We could have night racing back in Richmond in 2023.
I tell you what, and of course Dennis Bickmeyer, he does a great job running the show up there. So let's look first of all at the stats on Daytona. Of course, it is the Daytona 500, the first race of the year. Now it's 500 miles, it's 200 laps. So stage 1 would be 65 laps, stage 2 65 laps, and then of course the final one. They will go 200 something. Well, it's 200 laps, so it'll be like 70 laps. Yeah, 70 laps. So my bad, somewhere in that neighborhood. But who's counting? I mean, they can go overtime. You never know. But anyway, that's going to be this Sunday. Of course, it'll be on WFXR. We have a full slate of programming at 11:30 in the morning on Sunday. We have Countdown to Daytona. Then at noon, it's going to be Countdown Daytona Live, where our Next Star crew will be down there giving us a live preview. Then at 1 o'clock, it's NASCAR Race Day as we turn everything over to Fox. And then at 2:30, of course, is the Daytona 500 right then and there. And this wouldn't be the Fastlane, Mr. Eanes, if I didn't ask you the ever popular question. Give me your race winner, and then give me your dark horse.
I've been thinking a lot about the winner potentially for this event. And again, it's such a wild card. You could almost draw names out of a hat. Denny Hamlin's the favorite. He's the Vegas favorite. He's the best super speedway racer. maybe ever, but certainly of the current crop of drivers. And as much as I kind of want to go with Denny, I feel like everyone's going with Denny. So I'm actually going to go Joey Logano. I think he got a little bit of momentum winning the Clash. He's won the Daytona 500 before, back in 2015. He was on the cusp of winning it last year. Remember, he was leading with a half lap to go before that huge wreck with he and Brad Keselowski opened the door for McDowell to get that win. So I think Joey Logano puts the 22 in victory lane in the first race in 2022 this Sunday in Daytona. As for a dark horse, I really liked what I saw last night from the Trackhouse team. Both Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez had top 10 speeds. It shows that they brought good cars down here for Daytona. Now, granted, running in single lap qualifying and running the race are two different things, but keep an eye on the Trackhouse team this Sunday if you're looking for a dark horse in Daytona.
That's going to be some fun stuff. I'd say I'm really looking forward to this race. I mean, it is Sunday. I mean, you can't beat that. I mean, when you think of February, you got the Winter Olympics, you got the Super Bowl, you had the Clash, now you got Daytona. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than February. I mean, it's the month of love. It's the month of the presidents. I mean, it's so much. It's my wife's birthday and my mom's birthday. So that's, I mean, and you know, my father-in-law's birthday, my nieces and nephews' birthday. I mean, February's a big month, not only for sports, but in the Ferrell family. But you know, who knows how that is.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. And happy birthday to all those in your family. Those are all super important. Wife and mom, those are big deals. And yeah, I actually low key love this weekend because almost always it's NBA All-Star weekend, which, you know, I love the NBA, the game, the All-Star game itself isn't that much for me, but I love NBA Saturday night. So you get to watch the little dunk contest, 3-point contest on Saturday, and then Sunday get up and watch the biggest race of the year, the Daytona 500.
Well, I tell you one thing, this year is going to be great. And as usual, I appreciate you, Sammy. Sammy, I tell you what, you are the man. You're awesome. You know, you're the best. And I tell you what, NASCAR is great when you talk about it and we hear your insight because you know it inside and out. So have fun down at Daytona. You know, what seats do you got? Where are you in a suite? You in a box? You in a seat? What you
No, no. I'll just be roaming around and watching with anticipation. It doesn't matter where you are though. Every seat is great. And the best news, knock on wood, hopefully I don't jinx it. The weather looks amazing. If you remember the last 2 years, Daytona 500 weather impacted. This year, hopefully that's not going to be the case again. If it does end up happening, I guess you can blame me because I uttered those words. But it looks like a beautiful afternoon for racing on Sunday, and I can almost guarantee you it will be an awesome show with probably exhilarating moments coming down to the checkered flag. So no matter where you're watching, if it's in Daytona, if it's on your couch in the comfort of your home, it should be quite the show Sunday afternoon.
There you go. So it'll be on WFXR. We will have the coverage of it again beginning at 11:30 on Sunday, and then also we'll have live reports on Thursday and Friday. And again, as we're taping this, this is before the duels. So obviously we'll have that going on Thursday. So, but it's a fun time. And Sammy, again, I appreciate you. And then thanks for being in the Fastlane. I mean, you're the driver of the WFXR car, and we appreciate you driving us, giving us another checker flag. I mean, we haven't lost a race in a while. We've never lost a race. We're perfect.
That's right. No, I appreciate you guys renewing my contract for another year to come back and pilot this. Couldn't do it without you and everybody else. So we thank you and look forward to some exciting racing in 2022.
That's good stuff. Well, I tell you what, that was Sammy Eanes, our WFXR Sports Racing Insider. I'm Jermaine Ferrell. Hope all of your teams are winners. Enjoy the Daytona 500 and the rest of the NASCAR season. And we'll check you out next time on the WFXR Sports Fastlane on WFXRTV.com.